Human beings are naturally driven towards progress. We do not need financial motivations in order to want to do things. It is not required to have a carrot, so to speak, in front of someone or a stick behind them, whipping them on the butt to move people forward. Human beings, given enough time and given the leisure, will pursue advancement for the sake of advancement. Human beings are naturally curious and ambitious to varying different degrees and towards various different objectives. And the idea that we are somehow going to stop building, working, dreaming, and creating when financial and other incentives are taken away is a hijack. Long before any of the capitalistic industrialization or any of those types of incentives were around, human beings were innovating. Just all on their own. Simply, mainly, firstly, of course, because of survival. And survival required innovation and creativity. And many people discovered that they had a passion for many of these survival dependent, or these things that survival depended on, and derived great joy and pleasure, satisfaction from doing these things. And what has happened, even though we live in a world where it is quite obvious that scarcity has more to do with distribution than it actually has anything to do with unavailability, what is clearly apparent is that the maintenance of and the sustained idea of there being not enough to go around, and the continuance of the widening gap between people who have and those who have not, these wealth gaps, and these terms you'll hear like the cost of living crisis, these are all artificial and wedges that are intentionally nurtured for the perpetuation of control. It is a mad, power-hungry institution that the world at large is governed under. There are certain thresholds that have been demonstrated time and time again at which people are shown to be completely satisfied and know that they have enough. And beyond which joy, satisfaction, happiness, does not increase. And it is not a very large number when measured financially to what many people might think. And it has more to do with leveling off unnecessary toil. People are willing to work, and work even hard, what people would call working hard, and do it for their entire lives without any complaint, for the most part, in general, and I'm generalizing. They will do this if the compensation was always equitable, was always fair, that was in proportion to the effort they were putting out. And not everybody wants the same level of everything, but there are certain thresholds, certain ceilings and floors, right? A certain bottom and a top at which people will be generally satisfied. Generally and genuinely satisfied. And beyond that, any desires and any claims that more beyond that is actually required, because it's not, is manufactured and perpetuated as a control mechanism. Because indeed there are many malevolent, many maladapted, dare I say, psychopathic, and even more reluctantly narcissistic humans that actually govern our global society. And I say many, but it's enough, many enough, plenty enough to continue this form of governance, while they are, however, the minority, an actual numerical minority, but have found a way to hijack, to get in between fundamental, universal, human motivation mechanisms and innate drivers of desire. And in doing so, exert the kind of control and the imbalances of power that we experience every day and mistake for a natural and inherent characteristic of being human. It is in fact manufactured, it is engineered, and it is deployed against the unwilling majority. And these internal biological, psychological, spiritual systems that we operate from have been so hijacked and have been our attention, our understanding of why they exist our understanding has been misled to thinking that it is because of the current conditions of the kind of society that we live in, when in fact these are just normal natural drives that we have that would continue to exist without the current types of systems, specifically capitalism and other isms that are prevalent in our global community. And many people are led to believe, because of the idea of divide and conquer, that all of these different systems are somehow different. They think that socialism is different from communism, is different from capitalism, is different from so on and so forth. When in fact, they are all slightly differently nuanced, just enough to make them seem that they're different, but they're all the same control mechanisms that help to maintain these drivers of division. They are in fact not different from each other at all, only in very superficial ways. And when it is truly revealed to you, when you fully understand it, the control over you becomes less and less. It becomes limited. And you begin to regain more and more of your innate, shall I say, God-given sovereignty. And now, some people will cry, conspiracy theorist, or that's a conspiracy theory. Well, although I admit there was a time when I did fall into that generalized category, but those were much less educated times, much less experienced periods of life, with much less developed maturity, self-awareness, insight, hindsight, and lots of dedicated research, analysis, comparison, juxtaposition, on and on. Experimentation. And what becomes more and more apparent as time goes along, and as experience, experimentation, and education compound, these conclusions are more and more certain. And it reveals a wonderful simplicity about our existence. And I'm going to pivot now, based off of that understanding, into something that is very fundamental and operates as very much like a panacea or a universal solution to the issues that we experience when operating under this false motivation imperative. And it is very simple. Again, maybe challenging, maybe difficult, however simple. And that simple solution is to make attempts to try out, to audition various different activities in life. Look at the whole catalog of the world that you live in. Find things that genuinely and deeply interest you and start to play with them. Start to experiment with them. Begin to test them out. Practice them. Apply them. Think about them. Talk about them. Share them. Go to groups about it. Read books about it. Watch videos about it. Listen about it. But be active in it. And at some point in time, you will either maintain a long obsession and addiction with it and keep going because you actually really love it, or you'll set it aside for something else and eventually land on something that truly and genuinely motivates you. And in doing so, you discover, as many people already have, and you already know this because there are probably things like this for you. And the way you identify these things are, these are the things that when you're done working that you would really want to do. Especially creative people have a little bit stronger of a pull towards this. When I say creative, I mean people like artists, like painters, like sculptors, like dancers, musicians, right? But it's also the same for scientists, researchers, people who love to read, people who practice martial arts, people who write poetry, all of those things, right? All of the sciences, the liberal arts, the physical arts, all of these various disciplines that require focus and dedication. People will always be drawn towards these things to do them because it lives in our bodies. It lives in our biology. We don't need to be told or coerced or forced to do these various different things. Because as humans, the type of beings that we are, it's already built into us. It's already built into us. That's why when we're children, we want to run, jump, climb, and play, and do all of these various different things. These are just different forms of this kind of expressive drive that we possess. I don't know why they make these coconut water cartons like this. It's like just the way that it's made is there's always some coconut water that doesn't escape the container. I mean, this is really a poor design. But I digress. The focus and the understanding, what we know is that you have motivation without necessarily externalization. The desires that we have for expression, for community are built into us. These are all of those desires and things that we have. Our intellectual desires, our sexual desires, our creative desires. These things don't have to be forced upon us. We already want what we want, naturally, biologically, inherently, spiritually, psychologically. These things are already here. And all that's been done is that various systems have been put into place to siphon that currency, that energy that is ever flowing, to extract from the ever flowing stream of human creativity and productivity that has always been there. It's one of the reasons why people no longer live on farms. This was intentional. Removing people from agricultural homesteads where most of their needs for a living could be met, and what they weren't producing themselves could be bartered for. And yeah, maybe, of course, there are good arguments for the monetary systems that we have in place of just pure straight bartering, because not everything that was bartered was available at the time of exchange, and so there had to be some kind of notes for what was owed. That's not something to be argued against. There's some useful things about promissory notes and the like. But we've been bamboozled. We are under the thumb of a parasitic, vampiric system that is sucking our lifeblood. You see, something that is synonymous with life is chronos, time. In the same way that supposedly in physics, space-time are one fabric, lifetime itself is also one substance. And what has happened is we've been brainwashed and conditioned to believe that our lifetime equals money. And that's why we spend our time when we pay attention to things. But what we're actually doing is we are spending, if you will, our life. That's what time is. When we pay attention, it takes life, time, to pay attention. That's how you pay attention to things. Attention is simply experience. It's directed experience. Perception, it's what you are choosing, or what you think and believe you're choosing, because it's been hijacked, as I've said several times, where you are choosing to perceive. The experiences that you direct your perception towards cost your life. And little by little, moment by moment, that which you focus your attention on, that which you spend your time, your life on, gets that life and will never return. So the question becomes, what should you, as an individual, be spending your life on? And you can answer that question by focusing on what you truly, purely, genuinely desire. And you'll know that you truly, genuinely desire these things when, by engaging in these activities, you feel satisfaction, pleasure, joy, fulfillment, passion, motivation, inspiration, without attempting to directly or indirectly taking from anybody else, because it's not necessary. We live in an existence, a world, a universe of abundance, of infinite abundance, that the supply has been artificially limited. We truly live in an existence that is much like alchemy. Everything can be changed into something else. We live in a universe of conservation. Matter and energy cannot be created or destroyed. They simply change form. And we can change the form of anything. Maybe not quite directly like turning lead into gold, but we can make gold and diamonds artificially. We know how to do it. We know what they're made out of. But through different means, everything can be replenished. Scarcity is not the ultimate truth. It is one channel of truth on one frequency that we have been directed to focus upon to the exclusion of others for the benefit of a few who extract the life force of the many. We have the choice to opt out of feeding this ridiculous, almost maybe even absolutely evil system, to reclaim our sovereignty and do that which we truly desire. And inevitably, when humans balance out doing those things they're passionate about, everyone will benefit. It will fall under the category of engaging in transactions that benefit all whom it affects. Everyone has a place, everyone has a task, everyone has a job, everyone has a passion, a vocation, an avocation, things that they're motivated about that will improve themselves and others. But we've been removed from the true source of wealth. Wealth is the produce of the land and the labor of humankind. It is what comes from the earth and what we do with it. Plain and simple. Not all of the other go-betweens and in-betweens and all of the things that come between it. Directly from the land and what we can do with it. And we can do everything with the land. We can nourish ourselves with all the food and water that we need from the land. We can clothe ourselves with everything that we need from the land. We can shelter ourselves with everything that we need from the land. We can even adorn ourselves with accessories that we labor from the land, from what the land has produced. We humans have the ingenuity to do that. If only we were left with the access and opportunity to do so. I'm reminded of something that came to my attention recently, which showed me the reason why certain results are obtained. And in martial arts, for example, my objective has been to prevail in combat, to win fights. And the chosen style is one that often gets ridiculed for ineffectiveness in combat, being capoeira. But when you have the intention of an end goal, you can utilize almost anything to attain that goal when that truly is your focus. And another very clear example of this, and I'm not sure of the source, so you should look it up, but there were children who were given the objective of throwing their opponents to the floor and or pinning them. So under the rules of judo, but were not taught any judo techniques. And what happened is they started to develop on their own through trial and error, through practice, without any instruction, very advanced, some very simple, and everything in between, all the techniques that are known in judo in order to obtain those objectives of throwing the opponent to the ground and or pinning them. And so if we're left with good land, fertile soil, and all the materials that we need, just left to the abundance of the earth, and we know that our objective is to eat, to clothe ourselves, and to shelter ourselves, and to engage in interactions with our community for various different reasons, we'll figure it out. And then some. And recreation. And a little bit of excess for the times when the land is lean, when the produce is lean. We have the way to do all of this. We just need to be left to it. But instead, as I've said, it's been hijacked. And one solution to seeing this for yourself is by recognizing those things that you are drawn to. I know from my personal experience that I get genuine satisfaction and don't need anything else from doing the things that I love, from all kinds of research. That means all kinds of input, from listening to, watching, reading, observing, listening, and then speaking and showing and writing and singing and playing instruments and producing and composing and dancing and kicking and jumping and flipping and crawling and being active, doing all of these things without any other motivation except for the pure joy and fulfillment that I get from doing those things. I don't need anything else. And because I do that and there are people around, inevitably what happens is that I communicate with others about it. And there's the community. I have a vast and varied and thriving community of people that I communicate with every day without any effort that I know of. I don't even try. I just do the things that I love doing, and people are somehow magnetized towards that. I'm constantly asked questions about the things that I do. communicated to about the things that I do. Yeah, now there are things that I have done in order to promote certain things, but usually they're to promote other people's endeavors. I tell people about other things. I tell people about the places that I go or events that are coming up that I happen to be a part of. But I rarely, if ever, need to promote anything on my own. I simply build, work, dream, and create. I've been publishing on my websites for 20 years, since 2006 March. It's now 2026 April. And I've just been publishing. Before that, I was writing. I have notebooks and upon notebooks filled of creative writing, of poetry, of prose, of essays, of short stories, of lyrics. Thousands of songs recorded. Videos and tens of thousands, I don't know how many hours of me just training, flipping, running, kicking, climbing, crawling, squatting, playing, without any other incentive except to do that. And yes, there is some additional reward that happens when people acknowledge it and they tell me about it and they say, hey, that was cool, that looked cool, and that was awesome. And what people are really saying is they would like to do that too. And so you can come along and do it. It's not just for me. And you don't need anyone's permission to do so. You don't need anyone's permission to do things that you want to do. There's no need for a gatekeeper. It's really great when you can have a teacher or a guide, right, or a mentor to show you things that you might not know and to maybe give you an advantage that you wouldn't have by learning things on your own. But anything that you experience, anything that you think of, anything that you see, you can start to do it yourself. Some things you need to start off a little bit more slowly at first so you don't hurt yourself, especially a lot of the more physical and athletic activities. But most things you can just start to read about, to observe in various different ways what these are, especially a lot of the intellectual and artistic pursuits. You can draw whenever you want to. You don't need a whole paint set. You could use pencils, crayons, pens, whatever it is you have at hand, and just start doing it because you're curious about it and you want to figure something out and see what can be done. One of the main problems is that people's life is literally being vampirically stolen from them by all of these hours that people have to spend working. And think about this. Here's what's really interesting, right? Working for a living. Lifetime. Time is money. Pay attention. Spend time. You're working for your life. I mean, it's so weird. So it's basically saying you're giving your life for your life, because working means spending time, spending your life, because lifetime, time and life are the same thing, just like physicists claim space-time is the same thing. Lifetime is the same thing. So maybe space, life, and time are the same thing. And space in the more abstract and in the direct physical way. We need to be given space, meaning the freedom to pursue our desires and goals at our leisure. When people are given homesteads, they can live right next to each other as neighbors. And merit will decide how much you have or how little you have. And people will know who you are, the character of your soul. And if you're not producing enough because of whatever shortcomings you might have, people will gladly donate and share their excess with you. As long as you're not some evil, wicked, mean person that's just doing nasty things and being lazy for no reason at all. And yes, there are a few of those. But then there are also some people who are incapable, who don't have the abilities. And charity and community is bestowed upon them. Human beings, we are tribal. We do like to group up. But within those groups, within those communities, we'll sustain ourselves. We will make it. But we do have to realize that we have to break free from the sinister, universal, vampiric entity that is robbing, extracting, bleeding the life force, the lifetime from every individual that is not part of that system. We've been made cogs in a machine that we did not build. And we've been tricked into sustaining it. And it's about time we start to slowly dismantle it and finding our way back to our natural sovereignty. I am Hakeem Ali Bokas Alexander.